Sun Station Route 1 Fractal Engine. Elijah woke up with the sun beaming in his face. His back hurt, and as he woke up, he very quickly realized he was no longer in his bed. The floor below him was rough, uneven concrete, and sunlight was shining at him through many cracks in whatever the roof was. As he got his bearings, Elijah looked around him. He saw holes, large and small, perfectly square holes cut into the walls, floors, and roofs of the perfectly square hallways around him. In fact, the uneven concrete floor was due to small holes spread about under Elijah. The sun peeked in through these holes in the roof. Everything was concrete. There were no roads or paths or any sense of structure to this place, only repeating concrete patterns that got so small Elijah couldn't see them. They just kept getting smaller. Looking down, Elijah was stunned. It looked like a void, an infinite expanse of sky or ocean or some other blue thing below him. Most of the holes directly under him were not big enough for him to fit into, but some slightly further away. The whole place was dead silent. Elijah began walking, assuming this was some messed up dream. The hallways were seemingly infinite, stretching in the four cardinal directions farther than what should be possible. Occasionally, Elijah would find a hole that completely cut off his path, set things so large that the hallways didn't go through. He had to double back and find some other way around. Elijah kept track of the size of these hallways in his head. They repeated, but after every full repeat, a new size would be added. 112, 112, 113, so on and so forth. Elijah called out, seeing if there was anybody around to hear him. Of course, the only response was his own voice, echoing back. The corners of the holes were sharp, perfect 90-degree angles. When Elijah slammed his hand against one of the corners, it hurt. Elijah chose to believe it was still a dream. Elijah considered jumping off into the void just to see what would happen. He chose not to, though. Even in a supposed dream, it still scared him. Then, Elijah got an idea. Looking down, he was on a flat expanse. The void took over at a point, with no more of this giant platform below it. This must theoretically mean that it cut off at the top as well. Elijah could not get a good view of the top, but he could see the sun and its light still peeking through the perfectly square holes. If the sun were to reach him, it would need somewhere to move through and not be blocked by more concrete. And so, Elijah began to climb. Just like moving horizontally, the holes repeated. Unlike that, though, they ended much sooner. Elijah reached to the top, and now had a whole empty sky above him. At least, that was what he first thought. Elijah laid, catching his breath. There were a few small clouds dotted about the sky, but it was mostly clear and perfectly blue. Then, as Elijah kept looking, he noticed things. Small shapes way up in the sky. Lines and blobs and whatever else. He was not at the top. Not even close. Large treehouse. Elijah, now with an actual goal in sight, kept walking. Despite the work he had already done, he wasn't hungry or thirsty, only tired. Elijah tracked the position of the shapes up in the sky, and he found the nearest one, accessible by simply walking along the fractal. It took him quite a while, but as he got closer, the structure slowly became more and more visible. Similar to the fractal, it was all concrete. Unlike the fractal, it was shaped like natural things. At first, it seemed like a forest of massive oaks, but as Elijah figured out it was gray, it seemed more like a sculpture. Then, Elijah saw things in the trees. Lots of small buildings, ladders, and walkways, filling the spaces between the trees. It was a giant concrete treehouse. Elijah finally made it and ascended a ladder into the fort. Unlike the fractal, this place was anything but organized. The different structures were seemingly placed randomly, staircases and ladders extended for extreme lengths, and occasionally the rooms cut into one another. Elijah simply tried to get to the other side, simply moving up along the way. In one room, he found a notebook and pen. The notebook was empty and in good condition, so Elijah took it with him, writing about his experiences and findings. Location 1, Fractal. Level 1 hallway is slightly taller than me. From there, it doubles or halves depending on the size. The fractal is 3 level 4 hallways thick. The largest hallway possible moving horizontally is level 8. The largest I've found moving vertically is level 32. The smallest possible to see is 0.03. Location 2, Treehouse. Made of 7 structures as follows. House. Basic room with a door and other possible entrances. Platform. Basic flat ground with no roofs or walls. Basic hand railing. Can be next to one or more other structures, usually including a ladder or stair. Stairs. Small steps moving up and down. Never turns, always moving straight until it reaches a platform in both directions. Walkways. Like the platforms, but smaller and placed between 2 other structures. Pillar. Large concrete pillar, notably darker than the surrounding structures. Serves no real purpose, as all structures seem to be able to remain in place without anything below them. Ladder. It's just a ladder, nothing special to note. Junction. Far rarer than the other structures, found if 2 things are near with no other structure able to fill the gap. Usually shorter and less long than a walkway structure. The rest of the treehouse consists of actual trees. I'm not sure how many there are. Elijah kept the notebook with him and kept moving, still traversing through the misplaced and hazardous construction. At one point, Elijah found himself at one of the trees. It had bark, only the bark was, just like everything else, made of concrete. Elijah attempted to break a piece of the bark off to see if there was any real wood underneath, but he only found more gray. Then, Elijah found a ladder. It was an incredibly tall ladder, peaking up above the trees. Going up had allowed Elijah to escape the fractal, so he thought climbing this ladder would let him escape the treehouse as well. As Elijah climbed, he barely felt tired. Despite all of the difficult movement he had done, he was still not hungry or thirsty in the slightest. No sweat beaded on his forehead, and he didn't breathe any heavier. This was all Elijah needed to keep believing it was a dream. At least he was breathing, ruling out the afterlife option. Shatter Cube. Elijah found himself in a dark room. He could easily see, but compared to the bright, sun-bathed expanses of the top of the fractal engine and the open air of the large treehouse, this was a big change. It was a giant cube, not nearly to the scale of the fractal treehouse, but still big enough to where Elijah could hardly make out the top of it. Elijah had entered through the bottom, and so, just like he had been doing since he first woke up, he kept heading upwards, sure to write in his journal along the way. Location 3, Box. Large concrete box, walls roughly 6 feet thick. Almost completely sealed, excluding the entrance that I know of and an exit that I'm hoping actually exists. Filled with disjointed platforms, floating in air. How they don't fall, I'm not sure. Some are far too large to climb, but a path of smaller platforms I can climb keeps leading me up towards the top of this box. Despite no light being able to get in, I'm still able to see clearly. It's much darker, but not pitch black like it should be. The light definitely gives me some courage, even if it is a strange, possibly reckless courage. Either way, I continue on. Continuing upwards, Elijah eventually did find an exit. A long ramp led away from the cube, and now, out of the fog, Elijah could see something. A giant blue ball sat at the end of the ramp, as well as other ramps going elsewhere. Elijah walked up. Looking down, Elijah could see the tree houses getting smaller and smaller, and the fractal already quite far away. Elijah looked upwards to scout what might come next, and that's when he noticed one small, singular path. It was very long and led from seemingly nowhere to another place. The sun. The path stopped at the sun. Neptune viewpoint. At the end of the long ramp, Elijah was able to make out what the blue ball was. It looked like the planet Neptune, only it was much smaller and had two dark gray balls sticking out of it. Neptune was not what caught Elijah's attention, though. Instead, Elijah was focused on the two benches sitting in front of it. On one of the benches, for the first time since he woke up, Elijah saw another person. Hello? He spoke out. The person on the bench quickly turned around, in shock. Oh, hi, another person. Yeah, nice to meet you. Nice to meet you too, the person said, hopping over the bench and jogging down to Elijah. Up close, Elijah could see them more clearly. They were a woman quite a few years older than him. She had sleek brown hair and big green eyes. Her smile was large, almost uncomfortable looking. She was wearing an office outfit, but it looked unkempt and messy. My name's Elijah. What's yours? Kathy, how long have you been here? Maybe a couple of hours, I'm not sure. This place is weird as hell. Hell is not weird, simply bad. Let's continue this conversation sitting down. Elijah followed the woman up to the top of the ramp, where there was a small platform. Elijah set his notebook down and sat next to her on one of the benches. I've been here for a few days. Woke up after getting home from work. Kathy pointed towards one of the other ramps, branching off to the left. I came from up there, and met a fellow person here. This other man said he had been here for a long time. Apparently, Neptune in front of us was alive a while ago, but since passed away. Those great balls are its eyes. I see. I came from directly down the ramp, found a notebook down there. I've been writing weird stuff here. Things floating in air with no support, impossibly large architecture, every single thing being made of gosh darn concrete. Even these benches are concrete. What was your life like outside of here? Are you in college or working a job yet? I dropped out of college, currently working as a receptionist at a local aquarium. Actually, pretty chill. Pay is mediocre, but breaks are nice. What about your life? Finance for a big office. It's going fine. My boss is fine. Is your messy clothing a result of sleeping while in it, or it doesn't matter, okay? The conversation grew still, both staring at Neptune. Eventually, Elijah talked again. Well, neither of us have been down that path to the right. Want to explore over there? Sure. Better than just sitting here or going to a dead end. As the two walked along yet another ramp, Elijah opened his notebook once more, this time not writing anything but, if Neptune was ever truly alive, rest in peace. A ramp led me up to Neptune, and I see a long path leading to where the sun is in the sky. What if?